Hey everybody, I just wanted to let you know that this episode of Tabletop Babble is brought to you by Elderwood Academy. Now, you know Elderwood Academy. You have heard me talk about them before. They're the makers of many, many fine gaming products. The nicest gaming products I own, some Spellbook gaming boxes. I just got mine out because we moved and I moved my dice in them. Oh man, they are gorgeous. They're covered in leather. They are functional. They can hold your dice. You can get different custom inserts with them. You can get different customizable patterns and stuff on them. They just look beautiful. I get compliments on them wherever I go. You can make them look like the AC Inc. employee manual. It is just really cool. They make so many other things, little hex chests for your dice, scroll rolling trays, codex dice towers, and so much more. It all looks amazing. It contributes to the immersion at your table, and it is just going to get you lots of compliments. People are going to think you're a baller when you roll up with something from Elderwood at the gaming table. So head on over to elderwoodacademy.com/don't split. That's elderwoodacademy.com/don't split. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, Mike Myler is back, and he is talking about Vast Kaviya, which is his new campaign setting that he is currently crowdfunding through a website called Game On Tabletop. Mike and I get into it a little bit and talk about Game On. We talk about world building and why he is a campaign setting guru. You've heard him on this podcast before talking about campaign setting that he has created. Mike is really smart, and he is just a great chat. So let's get to the interview. But before we do, I do want to warn people that this conversation gets a little salty. So if you have young or sensitive ears, you may want to wait until you're alone or skip this podcast because there are a few curse words in this one. Just a heads up. Okay, everybody, now I am here with a great game designer, a force for good in the world, and an all-around awesome person. Mike Myler, welcome back to Tabletop Babble. It's great to have you here.
It is wonderful to be on again. Thank you for having me on the show.
Totally. Whenever you come here, you're always blowing my mind with some sort of new, awesome, out-of-the-box creation, and we're going to dive into that. But in case people have not caught up on your amazing episodes yet, who are you, and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Let's see. I have been here in the RPG industry as a freelance game designer on a full-time capacity now for half a decade.
I know. Wow.
Yeah, I know. I look back at my first stuff, I'm like, whoa. Not that it's bad or anything, just like it's so far behind me. Like I remember the first campaign setting I published for Anthea Codex. Like me then could never imagine me now is my takeaway. I make campaign settings, and I'm the editor for E-Insider, which is this really great D&D 5e Patreon. And also, I'll be teaching a mini course on making your own campaign setting primer for RPG Writer Workshop, I think, next month.
Oh, that's awesome. RPG Writer Workshop. That keeps coming up more and more. Ashley Warren is sort of heading that up, right?
Yeah, she is. And I was supportive of it because, like, we definitely need more, like, supporting things for the industry. I was like, how about you do something that's, nothing to do with DM's Guild? And eventually we came up with making a primer. So, like, if you've ever wanted to have, like, a cool 20-page PDF that explains your world and try to pitch it to publishers or GMs or as part of a crowdfunding campaign, come and take my course. I will help you.
Awesome. Yes, I would love to check that out. That sounds super fun, and people should definitely go check that out. And you have built a ton of campaign settings, which is why you're here. In your half a decade of experience, you've done a lot of stuff. Why don't you tell us about your latest creation, which as of the airing of this will officially be up and running on Game On Tabletop, which is a crowdfunding site that we're going to talk more about as well. But go ahead and tell me about your latest project, your latest world.
Well, this is my ninth crowdfunding campaign and my sixth campaign setting. I've worked on other ones, but those are the campaign settings I own. It's called Vast Kaviya. You can find the project and free stuff and a great website at vastkaviya.com. That's with a K. It's a primordial world of sword and sorcery. So think of like Conan, or my favorite examples, Fire and Ice. Did you ever see Fire and Ice by Ralph Bakshi?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Hell yes. Fire and Ice would fit perfectly in Vast Kaviya. It's a decentralized campaign setting. So it's not, there is no global map. And even if there was a global map, it'd be ridiculous. So, like, look at your monitor and imagine there's a sphere, and then put your pinky up to it. And your pinky nail is the size of the North American continent. And that's how
Whoa.
it's what vast is in the name for a very specific reason. It's vast. So, and it's also an NPC resource. So, like, it's we built it to be, and another one that's different. This one isn't so much the Mike show. Like Varanthia Codex, I had a big project full of people, and then I've been winnowing down my team. And this time I opened back up. So there's 9 other really great designers across the whole world, actually, and gender spectrum, and a bunch of other things. It was more diverse than I realized when I got everyone together, because I just kind of like take pitches and I blind them, so I don't even know who's pitching what until later when I reconnect it. Primordial Sword and Sorcery, NPC resource, and it's built modularly. So everybody submitted, most people submitted 1 warlord, maybe 2. There are a couple people who submitted 3 or 4. I submitted 6. And each warlord, yeah, well, I also wrote a lot of the other parts of the book. But yeah, each warlord has their own like minions and commanders and lieutenants. So there's like 4 NPCs a warlord, and each get their own lair or headquarters or something that's fully mapped. And the idea is that as you're traveling through the world, there are exploration rules. You reach a new area, the GM determines randomly what is in that area, whether that's Arctic terrain, like really high steppes, or mountains, or swamps, or whatever. And then there's a chance a warlord shows up in one of those, and you just procedurally build the map as your campaign goes on. So everybody has a different Vast Kaviya.
Oh, cool. So how does that procedurally, how does that work, building the map? That sounds awesome.
Well, I started with rules like that in 2099 Wasteland, which is like my love letter to Fallout / D&D. Whenever you reach a new area, the GM has, I think, a D8 to roll. Yeah, D8 to roll. Arctic, Badlands, Coast, Desert, Forest, Grassland, Mountains, or Swamp. And then also there are inhospitable terrains that we're including, which are just places where you would like settle down. It's possible for you to survive crossing like volcanic fields or a salt desert or frozen tundra. You get a reward at the end, and you're not intended to build a settlement in those specific areas. But the rest, yeah, it's just like resources where you can draw out manpower and natural resources and very scant supernatural resources, and use those to build settlements and sort of like set up your own civilization in Vast Kaviya.
So you've got all of these characters coming together. What sort of stories are you thinking people will tell in this world?
Well, you can tell all kinds of stories no matter what campaign setting you're talking about. I have learned. The trick is that some campaign settings are better for telling certain kinds of stories. So, like the analogy I often use is theater and stage crew, right? So, like, you can have a theater with a proscenium stage and a whole bunch of ionic columns and other Grecian accoutrements, or accoutrement. But whether or not people actually use that to tell a Greek tragedy is entirely up to those people. They could still do like a Shakespearean play, they could do a modern play, but like you can set the stage up to tell certain stories. So our goal with Vast Kaviya is to tell classic fantasy stories and primordial stuff. So like dinosaurs, cavemen, like your tribe has been what happens in the Scorpion, in the end of the book. There's chapter 8, the Scorpion Sea Temple adventure, where you live in Raycon Village. You've never gone more than 20 miles away from your home your entire life, and then suddenly it's raided. A whole bunch of people get kidnapped. You're one of the like training hunters that survives and isn't captured, and it's you're tasked by the new chieftain to go and find the Scorpion Raiders and recover all your fellow kidnapped villagers and the goods they took, and hopefully bring everybody home. Keeping it basic, keeping a little old school, and unlike all my other campaign settings, no crazy machinery or robot people. Or we do have undead dinosaurs and we do have psychic dinosaurs, but we do not have any robot dinosaurs.
Let's talk a little bit about the undead dinosaurs and the psychic dinosaurs, because those sound awesome. So how do those come about?
Well, actually, the whole campaign started because with 29 and Wasteland, I had a lot of my project backers who were like, "Can we please have more warlords? Can you make a warlords book? Can we have a warlords book?" And I knew I didn't have it in me to make another proper huge supplement for 29 and Wasteland. I made the book I needed to make, and it's awesome. But I had some leftover ideas because it was a voting process to determine what warlords were in 29 and Wasteland, and one of them was the one who won out by a wide margin was Techno Merlin. Everybody wanted to see Techno Merlin, which is dope. But it meant that Kalar the Lizard Lord did not make it off of the moon. So I took some of the ideas that I had ready for 29 Wasteland and I evaluated them. I was like, okay, so which of these make sense? History robot professor makes no sense in here. Psychic dinosaur, okay. Psionic cannibals, that works. And so then I started there. And actually, the Undead Dinosaurs weren't mine. They're Jesse Neon or Jesse Jordan. Are you familiar with this guy?
I am not.
He started to do stuff. He won a contest for Cobalt Press or something, a design contest. I picked him up just before that.
Oh, nice.
He has made an excellent warlord called the Wake of Maws. So it's really Slitherfin, which is this... I don't want to get too into it, but there's this black pond that curses stuff that drinks out of it, and then if you die, you become an undead. So there's this pack of dinosaurs that think it's about to be egg time. So they're loading up on meats and foods and stuff because they think that they're about to become pregnant, but they never will again because they're all undead. And they just kind of roam across Vast Kaviya, eating everything they can find.
Got it. Wow, that's awesome and terrifying.
Yes, I'm very pleased with these zombie dinosaurs. I mean, there's 8 of them or 7 of them. There's a lot. There's more. That warlord has more NPCs than any of the other warlords. So I was like, dude, we got to have all the zombie dinosaurs. So we do.
Gotcha. So how do warlords play into the setting? It seem like they're a very big part of it.
Well, they are so there are a couple of global rules, because I mentioned it's decentralized, right? But there are certain things that are true no matter where you are in Vast Kaviya. There are 13 things. 1, the world is vast, right? 2, there's just no formal magic. There's no wizards because there just hasn't been the dissemination of information that is required to have sophisticated, educated spell casting. And then what magic there is pretty light and little because warlords are always on the lookout for it because those are the people who become exponentially more powerful. And if you don't catch a spellcaster and yoke them to your will, then they will eventually, be able to cast stuff like Delayed Blast Fireball and Meteor Swarm, and they will be the new warlord. So, in the rules, it's recommended that a party have no more than 1 at possibly 2 spellcasters, and they should be very quiet about their spellcasting because they don't want to let it get out to the world at large, that they have access to magic because that's just a big target on their backs. And that's the narrative function of the warlords. Other than that, they're just meant to be fun and challenging. And like I said, I wanted to make a book that people could use easily with their own campaign settings. So segmenting NPCs out into their own distinct areas was a smart way to go about it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool and a great way to go about things. And that's also some cool lore. I love when mechanics inform lore and lore inform mechanics. Meteor Swarm is a really powerful spell, right? So of course people are going to be going after spellcasters before they get to that point because, all it takes is one person to get to that point and for the rest of the world to go, oh boy, we need to look out for people who are on this path.
Even Fireball, right? That's a squad of 8 archers firing all at once. That's crazy that you could have one person who's just boom, boom, I'm expressing physics on the world in a way that you cannot possibly do.
I know, right? It would be, it's no wonder we see often people are terrified of magic when we see these sort of older history tales, right? It's because if that's what magic could do, you would be scared of it too.
I talk about that in the Adventurer's Handbook. Where it's
nice.
Imagine that you walked outside and your neighbor just conjured a bear. They're just standing there and then a bear shows up. What would you actually do? You'd probably just run. You're what the fuck was that? Give me a gun,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's cool. It's fascinating. So, Mike, you are famous for including some unique mechanics in your settings as well. What sort of unique mechanics might we see in Vast Kaviya?
Well, some of them are global rules, right? So, we got rid of gods entirely. So your domains are determined by what your beliefs are. So as long as you can justify why your dude who believes in sacrifice should have access to this or that domain, you take it. There are spiritual patrons, but that weighs less on mechanics. There's no heavy armor, no rapiers, and no crossbows. So Anyone who would get proficiency with heavy armor, when you would gain that, instead you get a feature called skilled defense. So whenever you're wearing medium armor, you get an extra bonus to AC equal to half your proficiency bonus.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Thank you. I'm very pleased about that rule, because like at first we were just like, okay, well we'll just include higher AC bonuses for class archetypes, and then after thinking about it more, we're like, oh, but what if you want to play a class archetype that's like not in this book? That leaves you, especially if you're a fighter, at a huge disadvantage. So since there was no heavy armors at all, we figured we can make up that gap, and skill defense is the quick global rule to do that.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, and that's simple, and it still fits the flavor of the world. Some of the things that you were mentioning, like Conan or Ice and Fire, right, is the other one you mentioned. Those are known for their people not wearing armor aesthetic. Yeah. When you say sword and sorcery, I think that means like a certain aesthetic to a lot of people. What does it mean to you?
To me, it means like 1980s fantasy movies. I lean harder towards like a Hyperborea Conan type view on sword and sorcery, but it also includes, like Excalibur and like early medieval fantasy. Vast Kaviya's posited sort of at the end of the Bronze Age, beginning of the Iron Age. I think typical sword and sorcery is probably the end of the Iron Age.
Yeah, I think that's probably true.
People have castles. There's very very basic medicine. And you could do that in Vast Kaviya, but no, it's really meant to be more like primordial. I keep trying to wedge primordial before sword and sorcery to get the right idea. It's like Turok, like it's another
dinosaurs, right? Like sword and sorcery. I don't think we typically think of dinosaurs being involved.
Depends how pulpy you are, but yeah. I think a lot of people immediately are thinking dragons and walking around in the woods, and there's some of that too, but more stone weapons, which we have rules for.
So do stone weapons break?
Yes. Well, I mean, depends on what you're. So if you're wielding a regular stone weapon, and I'd have to double check exactly what the rules are. When you roll natural 1, you have to roll again, and if you roll under your target's AC, it breaks. And then if you're wielding an obsidian weapon, it's the same thing. Although the AC I think is higher that you have to hit. If you're on a critical hit, you can choose to have part of it break off and like leave a wound in whoever you're fighting.
That's cool. So that's you can sacrifice sort of your weapon to do this awesome gritty thing. I love that.
There are bone weapons, obsidian weapons, iron weapons, steel. There are a couple of steel weapons, but they're effectively magic items at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. So one of the things that I saw you tweeting about Vast Kaviya as you were getting ready for the launching the crowdfunding campaign is that this meme, I guess, of Lisa Simpson in front of the chalkboard talking about how you can take part, like the best settings are the ones that you can take parts of and put into other settings and vice versa. Why is it you feel this way about Vast Kaviya? Like, what can people plunder for their own settings if they want to?
Well, like I said, this is my 6th campaign setting, and what I've figured out from talking to people and getting feedback and like reading reviews and like actual plays and stuff like that is that ultimately what happens is GM's going to make their own interpretation of your campaign setting. I got this one guy playing Book of Exalted Darkness, right? And you remember Book of Exalted Darkness? It's all like decadent, decopunk, evil, and lavish gold everywhere, 1920s aesthetic. And he's got it like in a space epic with Pokemon trainers and a bunch of stuff where every time he messages me, I'm like, oh my God. And I eventually it hit me like, Mike, it's not your game. It's his game. And you're helping him play his game. So I kind of set out thinking like, let's make a book that is predicated to do what people are already doing with my books. Right? So if you're going to, I'm not going to use that word. If you're going to take one of my books and make very wide-ranging interpretations of it, I should make a book that is easy for someone to interpret in many different ways. In addition to like that modular setup where it's all these different like areas and regions and headquarters that you can kind of put wherever is most convenient for your campaign narrative. At the very end of the primer, the last page of content is like examples on how to take all the different warlords, all 20 of them, and play them in a medieval fantasy setting. So if you were doing Lord of the Rings, like here's how to take Kalar the Lizard Lord, my giant, terrifying psionic Tyrannosaurus Rex, and use him in like Faerun or Galarian or Greyhawk. And then I have another 6 pages on how to do it for Mists of Akuma or Book of Exalted Darkness or 29 at Wasteland.
That's really, really cool. So not only can you use it with other campaign settings, if you're a Mike Myler fan and you want to go check out his other settings, which are incredible, by the way, people should definitely go do that. Shameless plug, I have been involved in Book of Exalted Darkness, but that's a really cool way to tie things together and have them get even more value then out of the things that you have created. Especially since you said like this kind of started with people saying, could you make more for Wasteland? Like this has been awesome.
Yeah, I was already going to have to write one summary page of like how to insert the campaign setting into another campaign setting. So I was like, why not do it for Medieval Fantasy? And I was like, well, if you're going to do it for 2, Mike, you might as well do it for the other.
I now refer to this problem as the game designer's fallacy, right? Hey everybody, just wanted to take a quick break to let you know that this episode of Tabletop Babble is brought to you by Synth Bard. Are you looking for an excuse to revisit classic D&D? Of course you are. With custom composed soundtracks, Synth Bard breathes new life into first edition era adventure modules. At synthbard.com, you can download or buy physical copies of 2 soundtracked albums inspired by 80s era D&D adventures. The first is based on Tracy and Laura Hickman's legendary horror module Ravenloft. Spanning 2 CDs, each track is tied to locations throughout Castle Ravenloft and the village of Barovia. I got to listen to this incredible soundtrack. They sent it over. Oh, it is real. It is immersive. It is full. It is well mastered and mixed. It just sounds great. It's a mix of haunted piano melodies and classical chamber orchestra pieces, an epic pipe organ. You are definitely going to want to check it out. If you're playing through Curse of Strahd, honestly, this works for that too. It is like the amazing Castlevania goodness. I love it so much. The second soundtrack is based on the classic cult module Beyond the Crystal Cave, made up of 3 CDs spanning 35 tracks. The soundtrack provides musical background as PCs search for a pair of lost lovers through magical caverns, pristine gardens, and an interdimensional palace. This was amazing. You could definitely use this soundtrack for a lot of whimsical, dark fantasy. It is really, really good. Again, really full and awesome. Each album comes with a supplementary booklet that provides additional descriptions for the adventure modules. And true to D&D form, each booklet ends with appendices that offer suggestions on ways to use the tracks in your own campaign. Both digital and print versions of the soundtracks are available at synthbard.com. That's synthbard.com. Tell them DSPN sent you. Let's get back to the babble. So let's talk a little bit about Game on Tabletop. So I didn't know what Game on Tabletop was until we started talking about this. Why don't you tell people, like, what is it all about?
Game on Tabletop, I met these folks at PAX Unplugged the other year. They're really great. They're like the European version of Kickstarter, except they're specifically only for RPGs and board games. Just tabletop projects. The project page itself and like their services are awesome. There's a backer kit worked into the whole thing. They only take a 5% cut, which is amazing. And then the actual project page, like, did you look at the project page at all? Did you?
I did, yeah. I mean, it looks amazing. It looks really, really great, and is laid out, I would say, cleaner than Kickstarter.
You have so like here's another thing that kills me about Kickstarter. I've been doing projects at Kickstarter for like 5 years. You have 2 sizes of font at Kickstarter. You have it's like a 13-year-old made their interface. Like I don't understand why it's not at least as complicated as a forum is what it should be, and that's not what it is. So on the creator side of Kickstarter, it's incredibly frustrating. You have to make a lot of stuff into images, and then if you make it into images, it makes it inaccessible for a lot of people because then screen readers can't deal with it. Yeah. So, and then Game on Tabletop, they give you a ton of control over how the text looks, even what kind of font you use, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And then there's a tab for product previews where like it's super slick. You like mouse over stuff and then it'll give you like a written description. If you click on it, there's like a second different preview for it, and it's altogether just a much nicer venue. And then like I said, there's a pledge manager built into it. So at the end, if you find it late or if you want to add stuff after the fact, like it's not a nightmare. You don't have to have a second service involved. It's all just the same folks.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because for people who don't know, if you've never run a Kickstarter or you're not really sure, if somebody uses something like BackerKit, not only is that, do you need to then integrate that into with what's already happening with Kickstarter, they take a percentage then as well, in addition to the 10% Kickstarter normally takes, right? 10% that Kickstarter takes?
Something like that. Amazon also takes some more, but all told, Game on Tabletop takes a third of what Kickstarter takes from the creators.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that built-in backer kit. Whew. That is great. That is incredible.
I'm really excited. Like this is easily the nicest pitch page I have ever put together.
Yeah, it really does. It looks nice and clean, and there's a lot of other great projects on here as well. So, like, I love that that you were able to do this, and that you have shared this with me. I think it's going to be a great thing to let sort of the rest of the world know about. So, looking at your layouts here on Game on Tabletop, you've got some cool art, really evocative stuff. Who are your artists?
Well, the current cover, is a composite of Ekaterina. I'm gonna get her. Ekaterina B. I'm gonna go with because I don't want to mess up her last name. And then Jeff Brown, and those are actually public domain pieces that I collaged together. They're 3 different pieces.
Wow!
I know.
Wow,
Claudio
great.
Poses was like, Mike, this is really good, and I was like, oh my god! Because like Claudio's a real artist. Like, oh my god!
So, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know. I was just blown away. And then a lot of it is public domain. So some of it is like taken directly out of pulp stuff. So like there's a Tarzan on here that is public domain that I love to death. It's him like fighting a lion, and that evokes the right kind of feeling, right? Because that's kind of what I'm shooting for, that old school fantasy. And then there is an artist on Wikimedia actually who calls herself Lady of Hats. It's not her real name. Ekaterina Vladimikova was the lady for the front. And then the woman who did a bunch of stuff on Wikimedia is Mariana Ruiz Villarreal. And so if you look up like Dungeons and Dragons on Wikimedia, you'll find a bunch of black and white line illustrations, like grayscale. So I took all those and then meticulously over a couple of months painted all of them. And you'll see a couple of those pieces there. Like there are a lot of the dinosaurs. If they weren't already colored, I colored them. The Dryad Lady, I colored that. I did a lot of what is it? Does it count as graphics work?
I think so.
Yeah,
yeah, layout work. Yeah, for sure.
A lot of graphics work on the images, and then a lot of it is also stuff from Bob Gravenstein that I bought as a stock art, which I couldn't believe. I got an amazing deal on a bunch of stock art for him, and that's what the most book. We do have a Mike Okamoto, who some of your older listeners might recognize before our time, certainly. He does a lot of fantasy illustrations, sort of in the style of Frank Frazetta, like Fire and Ice, right? So he's going to do the cover. The current cover will become the back cover. And then Indy Martin is coming back to do whatever custom interior art that we need.
Wow, that's great. That's really cool. You've got a lot of great people on this, and you mentioned earlier your designers who you have pulled together. There's a long list here at the end of the Game on Tabletop page. So talk to me about how you rounded these people up.
Well, Andrew Engelbright is this dude who I've been mentoring, I guess, for a while. It's weird to use that word because it's not like an official relationship, but I give him lots of advice and I try to help him out because he's trying to start up as a freelancer. And he was going to do a bunch of stuff on DM's Guild, and I was like, please don't do that. Here's what we should do. And instead, they ran a Kickstarter called The Ultimate Race Creator, which has done phenomenally well. He said that they've made I don't want to give away his numbers. He's made more money with it than I expected he would, and I'm super fucking proud of him. Yeah, they're Loot the Bosses, the crew that he works with. But yeah, Ultimate Race Creator. So I know him through. I found him. I can't remember when exactly, but it was over a year ago. And I've just been dragging him along to everything because he's solid. And then the rest I found through RPG Writer Workshop, and I pulled off of the E-Insider call list. So I have 100+ people. If you are a game designer and you would like to work for E-Insider, you totally should. We'll pay you 3 cents a word for an exclusive license to your work that lasts for a year, and then you can do whatever the hell you want with it. So Will Gond, I think, came off of that list. Matteo Piavanelli, maybe. GM Lent, and Brian Estenes. And then the rest came out of RPG Writer Workshop, where I just like told people, like, hey, I'm doing this Primordial thing. Like, are you in? Would you like to send me pitches? And the ones who sent good pitches got on board. So Discord. Short answer, Discord.
Nice. That's awesome. And yeah, we did a whole podcast about E-Insider. People should check it out. It's one of the first places where I ever worked. It's a great place to work, and it's great because you get your stuff back after a year. That's like unheard of. So very cool. Plus, you get to work with Mike, which is a great opportunity.
And we're coming up on Article 300. Is already in the layout phases.
Congratulations. That's awesome. Nice. Well, is there anything else we should say about Vast Kaviya before we go?
This will be out by the time the project is up. So if you go to, again, vastkaviya.com, Kaviya, there'll be a link to the game on tabletop page. There's a 40-page primer PDF. It has so much awesome stuff in it. So it's got like half of the global rules in it, right? So it's about the world's massive, primitive, has no gods, spiritual patrons, little magic, no magic, and that's explained in detail. Then there are some fiction pieces. I started doing fiction pieces in Mists of Akuma, and I really enjoyed it. And then if you remember Book of Exalted Darkness, I also did fiction pieces, but I tied more of those together. Here, it's like 22 short stories or something like that, which was more than I originally was thinking when I was like, I'll write a short story for every warlord. So no, there's more than 22. There's like 30. And outside of the warlord chapter, they're all kind of like individual. Like the introduction chapter has party 1, and then the next 2 chapters have a sort of like Conan figure called, I think her name is Nakra, the Blade Empress. And it's about her, going on her Conan type journey. Each of the warlords has a short story about like a party, and of which there are 4. So you kind of follow like Zegka's journey from the high plains through all these different places until eventually they come upon Verisul, the Necrolord, and like see his giant castle being carried by skeletons, and they're like, oh shit! And they just like run back to their village to warn everybody and everyone they come across on the way there. There's a whole bunch of narrative jammed into it if you are interested in a campaign setting that is its own campaign setting, because we're realistic about when we're making this. We need to make a campaign setting that works in its own context. But it is also super useful if you have your own homebrew world that you've been developing for years with many different groups, and you don't want to abandon that. I totally get that, and I want to help you enjoy your game more, so here's a box just filled with NPCs. Oh, and some of them have so like whenever an NPC is built as a PC, we tell you. There's like a little icon, so then if you're just trying to do like a quick pickup game, you can be like, hey man, here's Tarzan. You're going to be playing, here's the Master of the Jungle. You'll be playing the Master of the Jungle. Here's the Barbarian Thief. You're going to play the Barbarian Thief. So you can quickly pick out like which ones are good to be used just in a short, quick capacity as player characters. And the primer has 2 of the warlords in there. The design team voted things too. So like I've been using them to figure out like some elements of what we're doing. Like for instance, what should go in the primer? And I was very happy that Kalar the Lizard Lord got voted into the primer, because he was one of the first warlords when I started thinking up this project in January. And then the other one is Togai the Awakened Reef, which is from Matteo Piavanelli, who I believe is in Italy. I'm not 100% sure it's in Italy. But it's like this hive mind coral reef that gets smashed by storms every single season. And when it gets destroyed, all the people who live above it and nearby just go insane and turn into like bloodthirsty savages. And then when it reforms, they're really nice and they want to trade and they're friendly and generous. So there's all these debating rumors that you'll hear about the Thamash Archipelago and whether or not you should go there. Because some traders are like, oh yeah, I go there every other season. It's wonderful. And then you run into this other guy who's like, I saw them eat my friend's face. And it's the same people. It just matters what time of year you're interacting with them.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really solid pitch. He sent it in. I was like, oh shit! Like I wish I would have thought of that. What else is in the primer? There's like I think maybe 10 creatures. My favorite of which is probably the drop dinosaur. which is just like a drop bear, but it's a dinosaur.
Of course.
I
Gotcha.
I was amazed there are no drop dinosaurs in like history. I thought for sure there'd be some kind of dinosaur that dropped from above, but no, not a
Oh,
one.
that's interesting.
So we fixed that. And then there's a mongrel folk race and a Tinocar, which are saurian, like dinosaur people race. Those are included in the primer, and the main book has a bunch more, of which the Otuni is the coolest one. The Otuni are like psionic parasites. So like you take a corpse and you're you host that corpse, and that's your host. And then for a number of months, you're okay based on your proficiency bonus and a roll. But then whenever you get injured, you'll like bleed weird green yellow goo. Which, if you're a human and you see Carl over there start bleeding, you know you're gonna be like, what the fuck is wrong with Carl? But say that you manage to like convince everyone, or I'm a weird race. Our race normally looks like this, or you've got it. Like, I'm cursed. So then after a number of years, you just start to like show up with like weird runes and imagery, just like glowing out of your skin like tattoos. I love the Utuni. So lots of different races. You see two of them in the primer. And then what's the other? Oh, devastation creatures. I thought you'd like this. So devastation creatures are like creatures that the players are going to be familiar with, right? Like iconic creatures, like the cockatrice, the hydra, the gargoyles, griffins, hippogriffs, oozes. It's like standard D&D stuff, but they're just a little bit different. So when you first see them, if you have a high enough passive perception and they have a low enough challenge rating, you'll realize like, oh, that's not a regular cockatrice. There's something weird with it. Otherwise, the GM just describes it as a cockatrice. And then I'm just using the cockatrice as an example. It gets near you and it like lets out this crazy blood-curdling scream that like hurts your mind. And you will start to like slowly turn to stone because that's its thing. The more psychic damage it does, the quicker and more likely creatures it's attacking are turned to stone. So all the devastation creatures are monsters that you're familiar with that the players will think they know what to do with. And then they will find out, hopefully with panic and drama and excitement, that it is not a regular cockatrice, that they have to do different tactics, that they've already gotten too far into the encounter to do it differently, and now they just sort of power through and be tricky. And it's I don't know, it's a fun dungeon master surprise. All the devastation creatures.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I love that a lot. You are correct.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to make a book that's good for GMs, man. And then the last thing in the primer to mention would be the mana. So like all my campaign settings have those thematic ability scores that I love talking about so much. And we wanted there to be something like that in Vast Kaviya, but for it not to be quite as omnipresent as Haitoku and Dignity are in Mists of Akuma, or like Sanctity and Sin in Book of Exiled Darkness. So mana is mostly a resource that players get to call upon. It's a really basic mechanic. You have a score equal to 10 plus your level, right? So eventually you will end up with a score of 30. And then the closer you are to an element, the easier it is to use it for a mana check. And then the more unlikely thing you want to have happen is the higher the DC, right? So like, say that you're fighting you're in the water and you're fighting like a bear, and you really need like something to help you get away from this bear or make your hits land a little easier. So you use your water element and you say, I want to make a mana check, and I want the undertow to suddenly like kick up really hard and knock this bear off its feet with my critical hit. You roll a mana check. You succeed on a 13 because you're in the water. You're near your element. It's your element. And what you're talking, you already have a critical hit, so there's a lot of momentum involved. So 13 seems like a pretty reasonable DC. And on a success, the bear gets knocked prone, and then you have advantage on attack rolls again next round, or it's got to get up, and so on and so forth. There's a page explaining the concept, but it's like magic is in the world. It's just not yoked by wizards and rules yet, and so everybody has their own innate magic, and that's what mana is.
So this is all in the primer.
Yeah.
Which means it's all available for how many dollars?
$0.
$0. The best kind of dollars to pay. So yeah, that's pretty awesome that you're giving this much stuff away for free for people to check out. So if people want to follow you, want to get the primer, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, if they want to get the primer and pledge the campaign, check it out. That's vastkaviya.com. VASTKAVIYA.com. You can follow me at MikeMyler.com or at Mike Myler 2 on the Twitter. And yeah, you can also just look up Vast Kaviya on Google. The website should show up in the top couple hits.
Nice. Excellent. And it will also, all of that will be on our website over at don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com. So, Mike, thank you so much for joining me today. I always love talking with you. Thanks for blowing my mind again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
That was a great interview with Mike. It's always awesome to have him on the show. It's showing me new things, blowing my mind, telling me about Game On Tabletop. People, if you like Tabletop Babble and we've blown your mind a few times and you have the cash to spare, head on over to patreon.com/Introcaso. That's patreon.com/INTROCASO and leave a few bucks if you can spare it. You'll get some extras from me, like a survey so you can vote on upcoming topics of the show, maybe a little few extra pieces of content, a monthly web chat. So go check it out, patreon.com/Introcaso. And if you're already giving there, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Your support makes this show possible. And speaking of supporting the show, did you know you can do it for free? If you head on over to iTunes, create a free account, you can rate this podcast and all the other podcasts you love, help other people find the show. Even if you're not using Apple Podcasts to rate and recommend podcasts, odds are your podcatcher app is doing that. It's using the iTunes algorithms. So if you're in Apple Podcasts right now, just pop on over and leave us 5 stars. Boom. It's as simple as that. If you leave us a written review, I'll read it out loud. You can make me say anything you want. So please, we could use more reviews. All right, people, you can find me on Twitter at James Introcaso. That's at JamesIntrocaso. Also, check out my blog, World Builder Blog, which is all about the game design stuff that I am doing. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget, RPGs are like sex. Hey, everybody, before we sign off, I wanted to let you know that this episode of Tabletop Babble you just listened to was brought to you by D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond really is an amazing product. They are the official digital toolset and game companion for Dungeons & Dragons. You can use D&D Beyond to build characters, track campaigns, run adventures, and do so much more. They've got an encounter builder. They've got a roadmap that shows you all of the improvements that will be coming up. Plus, you get all kinds of great freebies like articles from James J. Hake and videos from Todd Kenrick. So go check it out. I honestly don't know what you're doing. Head on over to dndbeyond.com right now. Check it out. Tell them DSPN sent you while you're trying everything for free. And then you'll be like, oh, now I need to buy it. It's so good, because it is good.